Do you feel like even though you're doing all the right things, you're putting in the work, you're still feeling like you're slowly being left out? You may even be thinking, I'm about to get fired. I'm here to tell you that may well and truly not be the case. And in fact, it's what we call today in the contemporary workforce quiet cutting. So, what is quiet cutting? Well, what it is not is what I'm trying to do, which is lose weight in the shadows and reappear as some sort of beast. Okay, it's not that, even though that would be nice. But it's what workplaces are starting to do where they're seeing employees that are not necessarily being visible, they're not necessarily standing out, and therefore they don't feel a connection with these people and don't want them on their projects. But there's no real good reason to let go of this person. So what do they do instead? They slowly cut you off from your responsibilities, getting on those big ticket items, and you slowly get left out from those projects. That's what we called quiet cutting. And that is where you absolutely do not want to end up. Because let me tell you, I have seen it firsthand how many people this has happened to and how clueless they're left out. And I can't help but feel bad for them, knowing what I probably do know, but actually can't tell it to their face. So today, I'm here to tell you whether you're in there and how to get out of that and how to stay out of that. So tune in because there's going to be 3 practical tips that you can take away from this. But let me first take you to a example of where I've seen this firsthand, and it commonly does occur in the consulting world. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work at Deloitte and I was within their consulting practice. And within consulting, for those of you who are not actually working in that field, typically it's very straightforward. You're either on a project or you're not. And when you're not on a project, it's what they call the bench. So it already has a bit of a negative connotation to it, but pretty much when you're on the bench, that's when you're helping do business development work, you're upskilling and whatnot. Now, while that may be good in the short term because you're not necessarily having the pressure of working on a project, you don't want to stay on the bench forever, because if you do, that is going to show in how well you're being utilized in the team. And if it comes out low, well, then clearly something's not right because you're not actually working on projects that are moving the needle forward and you're still getting caught up in proposal work. And your name may be even going on these projects, but yet you're not being sold on it. So why is that? So I remember a time when I was in the kitchen once, and it was a mate of mine who actually came up to me, and he said, "Hey, Jev, like, I've been here for 6 months, and all I've been doing is BD, business development work. So I've just been on the bench." He said, life was great for the first 3 months, but I'm starting to wonder like why it's taking so long. He told me that he reached out to his manager, and his manager put him on a few proposals to help out on. He reached out to the resourcing person and they told him that, yep, we're going to try and align things. And week by week, month by month, nothing was happening. And I wondered why that might be the case. And one thing that I did notice about him was that, yeah, I'm sure he was a really competent person, but the flaw and the drawback that I saw was that there wasn't really much networking that was going beyond just his manager and the resourcing person. You see, in the real world, it doesn't just come down to how competent you are with what you do. If you want to work with somebody and stay on those type of engagements, then it is critical that you build that connection with them, because these are people that you're hanging out on the daily, right? Think about it with your friends. If there's some random person that's trying to join your friendship circle and you've been told, yep, like they're a good person, but they're not showing any effort to actually display why they're a good person or why you want to have them in your group. And so these people might be lingering around, But between your circle, you've already whispered that you don't want them around because they've not really shown any effort, despite the fact that they've only been told they're a good person, right? So why would you want them around? And it's the exact same thing when it comes to the workplace. It's all well and good to be doing the work and being told, yep, you're a good worker, but how? Like, I want to actually know you. I need to develop trust. You need to be visible. And that's the issue that I think a lot of people are facing, particularly those that are more introverted, will find that they will do what they're told. They will do the proposal, they will do the business development. But where's the network? Where's going to the actual managers that are going to be on these projects and positioning yourself accordingly? That is how you can start to be quietly cut. And in this instance, with the friend of mine who wasn't able to get onto those projects, unfortunately, over time, even though I probably did at one point have a more direct conversation saying, hey, you need to actually speak to the managers directly. Go talk to the directors and tell them what you're interested in and sustain these catch ups and conversations. And eventually you'll go on to one. But when you do go onto a project, do not just do the work and that's it. And look, unfortunately, in that instance, the good part is he did get onto a project. The bad part is he still stayed relatively invisible and just did his work within that project and didn't really show any form of trying to engage with managers in that same area or develop that relationship with the same manager that he was on for that project. And eventually, from being slowly cut out, he actually got cut out. Now, that's the worst case scenario. And that's what I want to help you avoid, because if you find that you're just going on shitty projects or you're just getting on business development work or value added sort of little fix ups around the block, but it's nothing that's really moving the needle, you may need to ask yourself, are you being quietly cut? Because not only will you potentially lose your job when you're quietly cut, you may actually start to get quietly cut from friendships, from camaraderie. People talk in the office, right? There's not a lot of exciting things that are sometimes going on. And when people notice these things, you may be socially isolated from not just work, but beyond that. So there's three things that are critical when you find that you're slowly being cut. The first thing that you need to do is that whenever you come into a project, whenever you come into a meeting or a discussion, come prepared and speak early. Do not wait and just say nothing until you're prompted. You'd rather beat the crowd, beat the rush, and even though it may be the hard thing to do, because you're a smart person, you've done the preparation, you know that you can soundly put your hand up and say your piece. Because when you do that, you've already signaled, hey, I'm someone of value and I'm somebody that needs to be listened to and I bring something to the table. I don't just do things when I'm told. And that's it, right? And I think, one, it signals that, okay, this is a person that I can probably trust. And two, it takes the pressure off you then having to say anything post that time. So that can be really valuable. So beyond this is probably the first pillar. Now, the second point that I wanted to make is that visibility equals trust. So you need to stay visible throughout your time when you're there. If you're not visible and you start to just waver and fly under the radar, there is absolutely no trust that can be built. And that's why I said earlier that the key is that you need to slowly speak with your relevant counterparts, identify who are the important people on the engagements and the projects that you want to be on, and so build those relationships. Just put in a coffee catch up, whether it's a fortnightly, whether it's monthly, or just striking up a hey, hello, how are you, how's things going, and a check-in when you just run into somebody across the kitchen. These are small little things that will just remind somebody in their head, oh yeah, I remember Javon. He did tell me that he was interested in that sort of stuff. Hey, at least he cares, right? Oh, he's got an interesting thing to say about XYZ. Cool. And then when they start to keep doing this, it will reinforce in that person's head, oh, right, I remember him telling me he wants to be on this. Let me give him a go. Rather than them having to second guess and go through talking to different people to figure out what type of person you are because all you did was just your work and you didn't really voice out anything. It's the modern workplace is fast moving. We've been told to return to the office for a lot of people. Mandates are on, right? That means that the time to be quiet is no more. These are opportunities where people must capitalize on saying their piece when they're in the office rather than waiting till you get home and starting to send messages. That is when connections can be built. That is when people will remember you. And that could be the highlight for a lot of people's day from being cooped up in the home. So the experiences, the conversations that people have in person is going to stand out way more. So remember, visibility equals trust. And the last thing is track your wins, track your progress, have something ready in the back pocket so that when it does come time to doing, evaluations, or you do want to try and get onto things because you're noticing you're slowly being quietly cut, you have a log of the things that you do. And that's where I think, in contrast to what I've said earlier about just doing the work and nothing else, can actually come in handy. Because I'm not trying to say that if you're a capable person and that you know how to do the work, that's a bad thing. That is always still going to be a number one priority, because if you're just shit, then you're not going to get anywhere. So I'm not saying that, but be ready to actually have something to say for yourself and share your wins. I know it's cringe. I remember the first time that I was having to do performance reviews for work and, butter myself up. I hated it. It's just not something that I'm commonly used to, but sometimes you just got to get out of your skin and just have a couple of things to jazz it up. We've got our good friend ChatGPT now who can jazz up these terminologies of what you've done, and then you can just go ahead and say these things. And it goes a long way so that when you are slowly starting to lose these sort of responsibilities, you have something to fall back on and something to say. So, in summary, if you find that you're starting to be quietly cut, you need to act immediately. You need to start to notice what are the realms in which you're missing out on. So if it's certain projects or certain types of things that you want to do, you need to identify who are the people that I need to talk to, even if it's not even about work, just to have these conversations and for people to remember that you're still around, and just start having a very candid conversation. It doesn't need to lead into anywhere, but if you're feeling up for it and you want to show that you're seriously interested, then go for it. I think a lot of people will respect that, right? And the second thing I think, to sort of wrap this all around, is that if you are being quietly cut and it's not project related and it's just within your team, within this camaraderie, particularly when you're heading back into the office, then I hate to say it if it's not something that you like to do, but it is just going to have to be those simple little, hey, how you going, shake people's hands and whatnot. It goes a long way, honestly. I know for a fact that there are times when I've headed in and I will intentionally find an alternate route to avoid talking to somebody because I just cannot be asked, or I don't like them, or whatever it is, right? And I'm sure there's many of you watching this who probably do the same. And let me tell you, as much as it is the comfortable thing to do, in the long run, I firsthand have noticed that because of that, I have potentially missed out on sustaining good relationships and instead there are other people who are way more vocal and just do those small things, and it gets them far beyond where I possibly could have. Um, there are instances where I've seen really, really smart people, yet the needle doesn't move, the promotions don't happen, and it's simply because on a subconscious level, I think a lot of these more senior people who actually have the power to determine where you're going to go, what are they going to provide for you, it will start to signal that I'm going to put them on the gray zone in the bench area. So it's really important. So if you feel like you're being quietly cut, I want you to comment down below right now, what is it that you think is causing that, and what are you going to do about it? Because identifying it is the first step. As soon as you start to identify that this is a problem, I guarantee you, you will start to call yourself out and make those little tweaks around the block to avoid staying in that hole. I hope this helped. I'll see you in the next one.